The moment Victoria swept through those frosted glass doors, I knew the temperature in the room had dropped by exactly 10 degrees. Not because of her Louboutin heels clicking against the polished concrete like a metronome set to arrogance. Not because her gaggle of fresh-faced MBAs clutched their matching MacBooks like security blankets. No, I knew it when she spotted me quietly working on a cable-knit scarf during my lunch break and announced to the entire open floor plan, "Oh Martha, surely you can save the domestic hobbies for retirement. We're disrupting industries here." The silence was deafening. I could hear the hum of the espresso machine in the kitchen and someone's mechanical keyboard clicking in the distance. I didn't even flinch. Just finished the row I was working on, carefully placed my needles in their case, and folded the half-finished scarf like I'd been expecting this exact moment my entire career. Because I had been. This wasn't my first rodeo with a trust fund princess playing CEO. But it was the first time the princess held the keys to my life's work. Victoria Ashworthchen, freshly minted VP of Product Strategy by virtue of her Harvard MBA and her father's venture capital connections, had arrived to streamline operations and maximize synergistic potential. That's corporate speak for firing everyone over 40 and replacing them with people who use pivot as both a verb and a life philosophy. Before we dive into this beautiful train wreck of hubris meeting consequences, quick favor, if you're enjoying this tale of calculated justice, hit that follow button. Seriously, 94% of you are listening without following, and it motivates our team more than artisanal cold brew and righteous indignation combined. Back to Victoria. She called an all-hands meeting that same afternoon. Victoria perched on a sleek standing desk in the main conference room like a TED Talk speaker who'd never actually built anything in her life. She spoke about velocity optimization and disruptive innovation frameworks, while her eyes deliberately avoided mine, even though I was sitting in the front row. When she got to the part about sunsetting legacy personnel paradigms, her gaze finally landed on me like a laser pointer finding its target. Her assistant, some unfortunate soul named Bryce fresh from a coding bootcamp, distributed org charts with little arrows next to certain names. Mine had a particularly creative label, Transition Consultant Knowledge Transfer Phase. I've had root canals administered with more subtlety. That evening, I stayed late. Not because I had to, but because I wanted them to see me doing it. I moved my knitting basket off my desk, plugged in my external drive, and opened the encrypted folder labeled Medicore Analytics Suite version 4.1. Inside that folder lived 4 patents, 12 proprietary algorithms, and the entire backbone of the platform they thought they were about to revolutionize. All built during my 7 years as an independent contractor. All licensed to the company under revocable terms. My terms. My consulting firm. My intellectual property. They'd gotten so comfortable watching me knit quietly in the corner while debugging their code that they forgot I was the one who wrote the blueprint in the first place. I backed up everything. Triple redundancy, 1 copy on my personal drive, 1 on cold storage, and 1 on a secure server I'd maintained through my consulting LLC since 2019. That's when I first noticed red flags, when they started cutting QA budgets while tripling marketing spend. Smart contractors always pack a parachute. The next morning, my keycard access to the server room returned an error. That's when I knew I'd officially become corporate vapor. And that's when my smile became permanent, because when a ghost has receipts, she doesn't haunt, she invoices. They called it a strategic restructuring initiative, which is rich coming from someone who once asked if MySQL was related to Excel. Overnight, my title morphed from Senior Platform Architect to Principal Legacy Systems Consultant Emeritus. In corporate taxonomy, that translates to keep her around so she doesn't lawyer up, but don't let her near anything that requires actual thinking. I lost access to the deployment pipeline. The private Slack workspace I'd created 6 years ago with 3 developers and a pizza budget got archived. When I opened our project management system, the dashboard cheerfully informed me, no active assignments. A new product manager, someone with a hyphenated surname and a LinkedIn full of thought leadership posts, sent me a chirpy message, just hang tight while we realign responsibilities. Smiling face with smiling eyes, I hadn't felt that patronized since my ex-husband explained how a thermostat works. My calendar evaporated. No stand-ups, no sprint planning, no architecture reviews. I became the office phantom, floating between workstations, acknowledged with polite nods but never actually spoken to. I could have dyed my hair neon green and tap-danced through the hallways blasting punk rock, and Victoria still wouldn't have noticed me. I was background noise. But here's the thing about being background noise: you hear everything. Victoria strutted around the office throwing buzzwords like confetti, microservices architecture, containerized deployment, blockchain integration. Her development team nodded enthusiastically, while frantically Googling half her terminology under their desks. At one point, I overheard her tell an investor on a call, "The back-end infrastructure is basically plug-and-play, right? We can scale horizontally without any bottlenecks." I had to bite my tongue so hard I tasted copper. The back-end was custom-engineered across 7 programming languages and 5 database systems, all orchestrated through proprietary middleware I'd built from scratch using nothing but determination and espresso. Plug and play, my ass. Late one Thursday afternoon, I sat at my newly relocated desk, now strategically positioned behind a structural pillar, and pulled out the physical copy of my original consulting agreement. Signed back when the company was just me, the founder, and a shared workspace in downtown Portland. I'd insisted on my own legal representation, my own licensing language, full ownership retention of any proprietary components I developed. Clause 7C, proprietary algorithms and architectural frameworks developed by M. Chen Consulting LLC remain under exclusive ownership unless expressly transferred via written assignment. I hadn't transferred anything. There it was in black ink, my name, their oversight, my parachute. Victoria was too busy filming Instagram stories in the meditation room to read fine print. I thought back to the winter of 2018. Broke, working 16-hour days from a studio apartment with heating that sounded like a dying walrus. I'd built the first iteration of the analytics engine on a refurbished laptop held together with electrical tape and sheer willpower. Survived on ramen and expired energy bars. When they offered me a full-time consulting contract, I kept the patents exactly where they belonged, under my name. I was loyal, not stupid. So when HR scheduled a transition planning session and asked me to sign some paperwork, I read every single word. One clause requested that I reaffirm non-ownership of all platform-related intellectual property. I crossed it out with a red pen and wrote in careful handwriting, "IP exclusions retained per original contract clause 7C. Signed it. Smiled. Left. They thought they were marginalizing me. All they really did was remove the safety net from their own trapeze act. It happened on a Wednesday. The kind of gray, caffeine-stained morning that tastes like broken promises. I was eating a stale croissant at my exile desk, watching deployment logs like a retiree watching soap operas, when the notification chimed. Slack message. Company-wide channel. Victoria had meant to send a private DM to her new CTO. Instead, she posted it where all 47 employees could see it. Honestly, we need to clean house. Dead weight. Martha's still here collecting paychecks. Why exactly? The period at the end really sold the sentiment. Cold. Clinical. The kind of message you send when you think people like me don't matter anymore. You could feel the oxygen leave the building. One developer posted a confused emoji. Another quietly left the channel. Noah, the only engineer with a backbone, messaged me privately. That was completely out of line. I'm sorry. I replied with a thumbs up and finished my breakfast. 43 minutes later, HR pinged me. Could we schedule a quick touch base? Always a bad sign when HR wants to touch anything. We met in the glass fishbowl they optimistically call a wellness space, which smelled like vanilla candles and corporate anxiety. Rebecca from People Operations sat across from me with her practiced, "I'm on your side" expression, clutching a manila folder like it contained nuclear codes. "We'd like to offer you a transition package," she said. 8 weeks of severance, and of course we'd love for you to exit gracefully. Maybe even provide a LinkedIn recommendation. I almost laughed. They wanted me gone, but quietly, neatly, like I was a wine stain they could blot away with polite napkins. Of course, I said, smiling like a diplomat at a funeral. No need to make this complicated. Rebecca looked relieved. She slid the paperwork across the table. Legal documents in 8-point font, decorated with HR's favorite phrases: without prejudice, mutual agreement, intellectual property assignment. That last one nearly made me choke on my complimentary herbal tea. Clause 12. Employee relinquishes all claims to intellectual property associated with platform development. I clicked my pen, drew a single clean line through the entire sentence, and wrote in precise cursive, IP exclusions retained per original consulting contract clause 7C. Initialed it. Slid the papers back like poker chips. Rebecca blinked. Oh, I'll need to run this by legal. Please do, I said. I'm happy to wait. She didn't have a poker face. Just awkward silence and a nervous laugh that sounded like a smoke detector with a dying battery. I left the room before she could stammer anything else. I didn't need her approval. I had contracts. That afternoon, I cleared out my desk. What little remained of it. My favorite coffee mug with a faded university logo. A small notebook filled with architecture sketches from the early days. The knitting needles Victoria had mocked. I packed them all into a canvas tote bag like artifacts from a war nobody else knew had already been won. No goodbye lunch, no farewell speech, just a hallway of averted eyes and nervous small talk. They didn't know what I knew. They thought I was defeated. But I wasn't retreating. I was removing myself from the blast radius. And Victoria? She had just pulled the pin on her own grenade. By Friday, I was a memory. No Slack mentions, no Git commits, no trace in their project management system. Just a polite farewell email that read like a fortune cookie, wishing the team continued success in all future endeavors. At first, they celebrated. I could practically hear the champagne corks popping through the office windows. Victoria wore even higher heels that day, clicking through meetings like she was auditioning for Shark Tank. They thought I'd taken my knitting and gone quietly into suburban retirement, maybe joined a book club for displaced tech workers. Then came Monday. Noah texted me, "Do you know where the database migration scripts went? The staging environment is completely broken." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The answer was buried in a private repository nobody else could access. My repository. My naming conventions. My architecture. The nervous system of their entire platform. But it wasn't just the scripts. The system itself was behaving like a haunted house. Doors where there should be windows, switches that triggered nothing, processes that looped back into themselves like an Ouroboros made of code. Some unfortunate new hire named Tyler tried to comment on one of my orchestration files, // to do, what does Chronos_fallback mean? Chronos_fallback. An inside joke from 2019 between me and a developer who now makes artisanal furniture in Vermont. It triggered a 4 a.m. cron job that handled database rollbacks during deployment failures. Without it, their updates were now diving face-first into digital concrete. Victoria, naturally, refused to panic. She doubled down. "Bring in contractors," she snapped during a team call, wearing a blazer that made her look like an angry flight attendant. "There are offshore teams who can clean this up in 2 weeks." So they brought them in. A team from Bulgaria, another from Bangalore. Brilliant people, talented engineers, staring at my codebase like it was ancient hieroglyphics carved in obsidian. Noah told me later that one of the contractors quit mid-sprint, muttering something about American tech debt and impossible spaghetti code. Still, Victoria pressed forward. She wasn't about to admit failure. Not with board presentations scheduled. Not with TechCrunch articles already teasing revolutionary healthcare analytics and next-generation data processing. So she smiled, held her breath, and lit the fuse. They set a hard launch date, September 15th. No beta testing, no soft rollout, just one massive swing for the fences. Meanwhile, inside the development team, chaos reigned. Authentication systems failed in production. The auto-scaling stopped scaling. Payment processing triggered recursive errors that sent alert notifications to the founder's personal phone at 3 a.m. And then came the question that changed everything. During a development stand-up, the new CTO, some ex-Amazon director named Derek with cufflinks shaped like circuit boards, asked, "Where's the core analytic schema?" Long pause. Then Noah said it was in Martha's private repository. Silence. The kind you feel in your bones. Victoria blinked. What private repository? They all looked at each other like children realizing the babysitter had left hours ago and the house was on fire. The repository wasn't on the company's GitHub. It was hosted on infrastructure I maintained through my consulting LLC. The same servers with contractually protected code modules. The same intellectual property Victoria had never asked about because she assumed everything I'd ever built belonged to her now. But here's the thing about building systems from the ground up. While everyone else is pivoting and chasing funding rounds, you remember exactly where you buried the foundation.
And Victoria?
She didn't even know there was a foundation to find. Noah was the kind of developer who still believed in documentation.
Poor soul.
While the rest of them were pretending the backend wasn't held together with the digital equivalent of duct tape and prayer, he was digging quietly through deployment logs. That's when he found it buried in the container orchestration files, a single line of code that made his blood run cold. The modules weren't just helper functions. They were the spine of the entire system, the API throttling, the caching layer, the event handlers that managed asynchronous processing during high-traffic periods.
My stack.
Chen Analytics Suite version 4.1. My digital DNA woven through every function call. He messaged Victoria in their private channel, "Hey, just flagging this, the system is still calling Chen IP modules. Shouldn't we clarify the licensing?" She replied 3 minutes later with corporate dismissiveness, "Just commented out." Like you could comment out a central nervous system.
Noah didn't.
Instead, he quietly documented every dependency, every hidden call, every nested function that whispered my name in the system logs like a ghost in the machine. Meanwhile, I was in my kitchen drinking lukewarm tea, watching the access logs roll in through a monitoring script I'd set up weeks earlier. A simple bot that tracked every time one of my modules got pinged. It didn't block anything, that would have been too obvious. It just listened and counted. 1 ping became 10. 10 became hundreds. The development environment, the staging servers, even the demo sandbox Victoria used to impress investors. All of them still running on my work, my code, my terms. The invoices didn't arrive all at once. That would have been theatrical. They started quietly, an email to accounting from billing@mcannanalytics.com. Subject line, Q3 License Usage Report Chen Analytics Suite. Attached, a CSV file with request counts, timestamps, module names, and usage subtotals.
It wasn't threatening. It didn't need to be. It was just business. Legal hadn't seen it yet. Victoria hadn't either.
They were too busy pushing promotional materials and finalizing the launch livestream. The downtown co-working space had been transformed into a studio with LED panels and a fake brick wall featuring buzzwords they couldn't define.
But Noah knew.
He'd seen the signs, the silence in the logs, the comments nobody dared delete, the eerie way the system still functioned not because of their work, but in spite of it.
He messaged me once, "You planned this, didn't you?" I didn't respond.
Not because I was being coy, but because I was busy adding a new field to my invoice template, per seat licensing enterprise tier. The fire hadn't started yet, but the air was getting warm. By early September, the office smelled like panic sweat and energy drinks. Victoria had scheduled the full product launch for the 15th. Big presentation, big promises, big failure waiting to happen. They'd rented a downtown venue with exposed brick and ring lights, hired social media interns to manage the launch like it was a Super Bowl commercial. Hashtag started flying, hashtag health tech revolution, hashtag data-driven, hashtag built different.
None of it mentioned me. None of it could mention me.
They didn't even understand what they were standing on.
And Victoria?
She was too busy practicing her opening pitch in front of the bathroom mirror to notice that the foundation was crumbling. The development team was unraveling. 16-hour days, desperate patches, features that randomly disappeared when pushed to production. Noah quietly fixed what he could, but even duct tape gives up eventually. He sent Victoria a formal email with the subject line, "Critical Licensing Risk Chen Analytics Suite Urgent." The body was simple. The current platform still runs on proprietary components authored by Chen Analytics LLC.
I believe we are not licensed for commercial deployment.
She read it, Gmail tracking logs don't lie. She clicked it, spent 37 seconds scanning it, then hit delete. No reply, no meeting, just a LinkedIn post that afternoon, "So proud of this team.
We're redefining healthcare analytics. Stay tuned for September 15th. Rocket."
Her ignorance wasn't passive anymore.
It was malignant. Noah tried again. Slipped a note to legal. No response.
Because nobody wants to hear about ghosts when they're printing confetti.
Meanwhile, I was busy.
Not scheming, not lurking, just documenting.
Quietly.
On September 8th at 2:47 a.m., I uploaded a batch of files to the U.S. Copyright Office's electronic filing system. The complete codebase of Chen Analytics Suite version 4.1. Every algorithm, every module, every line of code, annotated, time-stamped, registered. The registration went live September 10th. Public record, Chen Analytics LLC, Healthcare Data Processing Architecture version 4.1. No fanfare, no announcement, just a legal landmine sitting in plain sight. I posted one update to my company website that day. Subtle, all modules currently in commercial use by external entities must be covered by active licensing agreements. Automated usage tracking implemented. Billing processed monthly. That was it. No threats, just clarity. Back in launch preparation land, Victoria was picking out which angle looked best on camera. The development team was one broken commit away from mutiny, but nobody spoke up. Fear had turned smart people into ghosts too. September 15th was locked in stone, and the closer it crept, the louder the silence became. Launch day arrived wrapped in glossy delusion and false confidence. The live stream kicked off at exactly 11 a.m., right on schedule. Victoria strutted onto the makeshift stage in white sneakers and a navy blazer, radiating startup messiah energy. Behind her, a giant screen flashed, "Meet the future, adaptive healthcare analytics, rebuilt from the ground up." Funny tagline, considering the ground was still mine. The demo worked. Mostly. A few hiccups, minor lag, one error message with placeholder text, but Victoria played it off like a seasoned professional. Investors applauded in the chat. Twitter buzzed. The founder wiped away what might have been a tear. At 11:52 a.m., 4 minutes after the final applause died down, the first domino fell. A soft notification hit the accounting inbox. From billing@mchenanalytics.com. Subject, Chen Analytics, Q3 usage invoice. Attachment, mchen_analytics_Q3_usage.pdf. Inside, a neat table. Timestamps, server calls, module identifiers, runtime hours, total instances. Breakdown by environment, staging, production, demo. Final line item, total due, $247,850. Due date, net 30. Remit to Chen Analytics LLC. Victoria never saw it initially. The intern managing accounting flagged it as potential spam. But 53 minutes later, legal did. Their director, a careful man named Patterson who still wore suspenders, forwarded it with a red flag to Victoria, the CTO, and the CFO with one line, "This appears enforceable. We need to discuss immediately." Victoria skimmed it, paused, then replied, "Ignore it. We've moved off that legacy code." Except they hadn't. At 1:23 p.m., Noah replied all with 2 attachments, screenshots from the current codebase showing active calls to Chen Analytics version 4.1 core modules, and deployment logs timestamped during that morning's live demo. He added one sentence that hit like a shotgun blast: "We are currently running on unlicensed code. This invoice is legitimate." That's when panic truly bloomed. Legal went silent, never a good sign. Slack channels exploded. Accounting pinged engineering. Engineering pinged DevOps. Victoria locked herself in the conference room, pacing, gesturing, chewing her thumbnail like it contained answers. Then came the knockout punch. Noah posted one more message, this time in the leadership channel, just confirmed with the Copyright Office. The code was registered to Chen Analytics on September 10th. It's public record. Silence. Static. Held breath. At 2:17 p.m., Patterson from Legal followed up, also worth noting, per the original consulting contract, license renewals required 30-day notice for commercial deployment. According to this documentation, he attached my polite notification sent 48 hours before launch. Martha Chun revoked auto-renewal effective immediately. They were notified, confirmed receipt. All legal, all enforceable, all completely avoidable. But Victoria had been too busy choosing Instagram filters for the launch countdown. The CFO's voice was reportedly heard 3 floors down. "What do you mean we owe her $250,000? The celebration fizzled. Investors ghosted. The champagne stayed corked. And Victoria? She stared at that invoice again, finally noticing what she'd missed the first time: additional usage above threshold incurs tiered fees per active user seat. Somewhere in a small house with a purring cat and an unopened bottle of champagne, I clicked send on the Q4 projection invoice. By the next morning, the buzz had turned toxic. What was supposed to be a triumphant success story morphed into a cautionary tale about hubris and due diligence. Tech journalists started circling like digital vultures. First, a quiet tweet from a freelance reporter, hearing rumblings about a licensing issue at yesterday's health tech launch. Chin analytics involved? Eyes. Then a thread. Then a headline: Startup's big launch built on unlicensed IP legal battle brewing. Just like that, the fire spread. Investors who had flooded Victoria's inbox with rocket ship emojis the day before now sent terse messages: please clarify the IP situation. Urgent. Cannot have exposure here. Another simply asked, is Martha Chun suing you? She wasn't. I wasn't. I didn't need to. The paperwork was doing all the talking. By noon, the board had called an emergency meeting. The founder looked like he hadn't slept since the Clinton administration. The CFO's eye was twitching in Morse code. Victoria, still trying to steer the Titanic with a post-it note, delivered the line she'd been rehearsing all morning. It's a clerical oversight. We're reviewing our licensing agreements and will resolve this amicably. Patterson from legal, now decidedly not on Team Victoria, slid a packet across the conference table. My original consulting agreement, highlighted, annotated, Clause 7C circled in blue, IP usage rights granted via renewable license under Chen Analytics LLC. No transfer of ownership. Attached below, the termination notice I'd sent 2 days before launch. Subject line: Termination of licensing auto-renewal, effective immediately. Signed, delivered, confirmed. It's not a threat, Patterson said flatly. It's enforceable. How much do we owe her? Asked the founder, already pale. Patterson clicked his pen. As of now, $247,850. With Q4 projections and per seat usage, closer to $590,000. And climbing. That's when someone gasped. A junior board member pulled out her phone and played a clip someone had found on Victoria's now private TikTok account. A behind-the-scenes video from launch rehearsals. Victoria, laughing into the camera: Martha? That woman just knits and coasts. We rebuilt everything she touched. This is my platform now. The room went dead silent. She hadn't rebuilt anything. She hadn't even read the documents she signed. Noah, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up for the first time: we didn't rebuild it. We just reskinned it. The core is still hers. The founder looked at Victoria with the expression of a man watching his life savings disappear. Is this true? And for the first time in months, she had nothing to say. The board didn't yell. That would have been merciful. They sat in cold, horrified silence. When someone finally asked Patterson, what happens if we don't pay, he answered without hesitation: she'll pursue collection. If it goes to court, she has timestamps, contracts, usage logs, copyright registration, and documented attempts to resolve this privately. We'd lose publicly and expensively. The founder rubbed his face like he was trying to erase the last 6 months. Get her on the phone. But Martha Chun doesn't take calls from people who mocked her knitting while she built the foundation of their empire. The only sound in that boardroom was the echo of Victoria's voice from a paused TikTok video: that woman just knits and coasts. Correction, that woman built the machine you're now bleeding from. The emergency board meeting concluded with Victoria's resignation, effective immediately. No severance, no recommendations, just a quiet exit through the side door while the janitor emptied trash cans. Later that afternoon, my inbox chimed. Subject: Chen Analytics Licensing, open to negotiation, from board@company.com. Tone: desperate, dressed as diplomatic. Dear Ms. Chun, we'd like to open a dialogue regarding potential renegotiation of licensing terms for your intellectual property. Given recent misunderstandings, we hope to find an arrangement beneficial to both parties. Sincerely, the Board of Directors. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I poured wine into a glass the size of a goldfish bowl and sat on my back porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink.
My laptop hummed quietly beside me. A neighbor's cat dozed across my sandals. The evening air smelled like jasmine and justice. I logged into the back end of my licensing portal, opened the pricing dashboard, clicked Edit Terms. Under Enterprise License Agreement, I changed one line, per seat pricing, enabled. Retroactive billing, applicable. Saved. Closed the laptop. Picked up my knitting. Silence is a powerful negotiating tool. So is documentation, patience, and remembering exactly where you planted every legal landmine. I never raised my voice, never made threats, never played dirty. But when the reckoning came, they knew exactly who orchestrated it. There's something deeply satisfying about watching meticulous preparation triumph over casual arrogance. It reminds us that real power isn't in the loudest voice in the room, it's in the smartest contract. When you're underestimated, don't get emotional. Get methodical. Thanks for sticking around through this tale of professional karma, you legends. Hit that subscribe button for more stories where patience beats ego and documentation defeats delusion. Let's make corporate bullies everywhere double-check their contracts in fear. Martha Chun is currently accepting new consulting clients. Her knitting is also available for purchase on Etsy.